appreciate your time. I think we wanted to always talk about mental health because we're so passionate about it and see what as I put it as a title, what the challenges and opportunities are in our industry. So if it's all right with you today, James, I'll have a look at what challenges we both see in the industry, whether we agree with them or whether there are differences.
Mm.
Having a look at breaking down what simple strategy may look like. So if you could sort of share with us, what a strategy looks like when we move on to that part. We'll look at what good support looks like. So, what you can recommend to make sure that we guarantee success in mental health awareness in the industry. And then maybe just some final points that I've seen and just get your thoughts on whether you agree with them or can extend upon them further.
Absolutely.
Do you want to give a quick background about your good self as well? I'm conscious I don't want to jump straight into it.
Yeah, so I'm James Knott, Health and Safety Manager at SJ Easton Carpentry and Joinery. We also now specialise in fireproofing, and that division of the business has been going on for about a year now, so that's slowly taken off. I currently got 4 live projects in London that I support on a regular basis and visit the site as part of our contractual obligations with the main contractor, our client. I've been at SJ Easton since September 2018, so still getting my feet under the table. But yeah, so far so good, and it's an enjoyable job, sure.
Oh, decent. And it sounds like actually your risk profile and the responsibilities you do in your job are quite vast if you're going across both the fireproofing side and other projects as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's another string to the bow, and it's just we're learning from a health and safety perspective. It's pretty much the same, but it's just having that understanding and that learning to understand that we can commit to it safely and we can ensure we do a good job at the end of the day. So put it blunt.
Nice. No, I appreciate that honesty, James. It's great to hear that it's advancing and you're seeing things engaging a bit further on the safety side. And certainly, I guess the mental health is the challenge that we wanted to talk here. I hope you don't mind. I'll jump straight in. I was having a think about before preparing this, what would be the main challenges that I certainly saw. And I guess you can see here the 3 main challenges. Let's start with the most obvious one of, I still think there's stigma around it within the industry. Do you think that's a fair comment?
Yeah, couldn't agree more there, Rob. Absolutely. I think there is still a stigma in there. It's still a very macho industry, let's get up, let's get the job done, let's go home. It's very much like that. And I think us blokes, we're big and proud, and we have that pride. And I think a lot of men are very they don't want to seem to be vulnerable. They don't want to let their vulnerability come out. And I think that is really what's that stigma is still there. I think we haven't really scraped under the surface yet. We're just coming out of COVID, the pandemic, and we're definitely going to see a mental health epidemic. We're going to currently in one, and I think that's really going to take its toll. And again, it's going to have massive effects on the industry if contractors, and I think the government as well, needs to do more.
It's good that we definitely agree with that same sentiment. I think I read a stat somewhere that still the leading cause of male death under 45 is still suicide.
It's unbelievable, really unbelievable. Yeah. Frightening, really. It's frightening and scary as well, because these are livelihoods, these are families, and you just think of the consequences. And it's such a shame that people are getting to that stage where they want to go, and it breaks my heart. Absolutely breaks my heart.
And I think it kind of shows us that although it's a challenge, it's the absolute right opportunity we need to tackle from a prioritization basis.
Absolutely, but I think it's the right way of going about it. Everyone talks about mental health now. It's out there, but I don't think people know how to go about it and to help improve it, help to build on it. People have these conversations, but is it enough? Is it enough?
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And probably very related to that second challenge that I've got, that, we are all talking about it. How do we go about it? And it's that business buy-in. We know senior managers will put the right resources to something, but you need to make sure that the business have bought into it to release that resource. So maybe sometimes, I don't know if this is a fair question, James, but very much I see, unless you can show a true return of investment, it's very difficult to get people to buy into something like mental health.
Absolutely, and I think it all goes back to experience. And if companies or companies and organisations have experienced mental health or ill mental health seen within their employees, I think they're more likely to take or make change. Okay. So it's almost like it's got to happen before people are going to have that buy-in, which is a shame, really. It's almost like something bad's got to happen within the business, whether that's somebody going off with depression, somebody, having an eating disorder, or some sort of mental health complication.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I think some employees the employees are probably more are gonna probably break down before the business kind of helps them, really. And I think it's being more resilient to prevent that.
Yeah, it's very much still reactive, I guess, maybe my right word to choose there. And it's still balancing, us as safety professionals very much are expert plate spinners, and kind of that's then the third challenge, that although we know mental health is a priority, there are still other health and safety priorities that we have to balance out there. I mean, you mentioned COVID before, that's still a challenge, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's getting a balance, but it's how do we get mental health, like first aid or like some of the other key core health and safety risks that we used to as occupational safety professionals. So it's kind of bringing that and making that a priority. And like it goes back to what I said, I think something's got to happen until that does become a priority, which is such a shame.
It's kind of that negative loop, really, isn't it? You're caught in that feedback loop. You've got to wait until then to respond. So it's a challenge.
Absolutely, which is such a shame. Which is such a shame. But that's why we're having this conversation today, and hopefully we are going to get businesses to buy in and understand. That's the most important thing, is understand.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation. And certainly the rest of the slide you can see here, James, although we're talking about challenges quite negative, there is a lot of positivity in the industry, because we are seeing charities and more national campaigns coming out. I mean, even jumping on the trains, you can see that partnership between Network Rail and Good Samaritans, for example.
Absolutely, and it's great when you walk around and you're seeing it, because it's it's there in your eyes. There is help out there, and it kind of gets people thinking twice, and that's exactly what we need to do, is to get people thinking twice, and actually there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, no, very fair.
So yeah.
No, that's great. Thanks for that, James. And definitely those that are listening to our webinar now, very much around, what observations do your good self see as an audience? Do you agree with the observations that we've just discussed, or is there anything else that you can share with ourselves on the blog? Absolutely. So moving into the mental health strategy then, I said that we should probably pick that apart a bit. It's all well and good us saying, yeah, we need to show a good return of investment, but what does a good mental health strategy look like? We need to make sure it's multifaceted and got the elements to discuss. And what I'm presenting to you now, James, is kind of how we do a mental health strategy in our business currently. So I'd be keen to explore some questions, whether this is something you already do or anything else that you'd recommend. Certainly, if I start with the policy, I mean, I think you need to show that senior management commitment, like we've always done with health and safety. So having that policy at the top is essential. Now, the question I had was whether we think mental health policy needs to be separate, or whether it can be incorporated into the likes of an Equality Act with your HR functions.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think it could be built into something, or it could be overlapping in all different types of areas, because I think it shouldn't just be put somewhere. It shouldn't, because you don't want to forget. You don't want it to get lost or forgotten about. And that's the most important thing. And you want people to make sure your employees are aware of the policy. So you don't want to kind of embed it with something. So definitely having it maybe standalone is probably more. If we are prioritising mental health, then I think it probably should be standalone, or there should be some sort of procedure, risk assessment in place separately for that, definitely.
That's great. No, thank you for sharing that, James. I think that is crucial. It's not just that visibility, but it's also how does it interact with everything currently? So you're not reinventing the wheel, but you still make it visible. So I like that. And maybe a starting point as your risk assessment is really useful. And certainly what we want to do at Hands HQ is share the mental health risk assessment that we've written to see if people can benefit from it. And we're always keen to get comments back to improve that product for our customers and anyone else that wants to engage with our product.
Yeah, absolutely. I know some of the main contractors we work with love all of that stuff. So including that within like your, so part of your construction phase plan, even if it's a paragraph, or even including that in your main manual handling or logistics strands where you may cover a lot of the site specifics, just stuff like that. They all love, and it's another good tick in the right area. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, brilliant. Thank you for that insight, James. And certainly, I guess what falls outside is if you've already got support features, how can you use support resources to make mental health more aware and more open? So very much, I'm a big fan of endorsing any employee assistance programs that you may have and actually using the resources that you get from there, maybe even creating your own awareness campaigns around that. I mean, maybe parking mental health slightly separately, James. Are there sort of awareness campaigns you do in SJE at the moment, and how does that engagement and communication happen?
Yeah, I mean, we do, all the projects I have, we have health and safety WhatsApp groups. So we're constantly engaging with the carpenters. What I do is I actually make sure that when I do my site visits, I try and see as many operatives, or not all of them if I can, and kind of just have a good chat, understand with them. It's kind of a one-to-one, how are you? So it's kind of making it a bit more personal. And then we have several campaigns running throughout the business. I try and do a quarterly campaign. What I'm quite keen to do is something called Think Twice. So it's basically just to really get people thinking twice, just about how they go about their day job, to their kind of thinking process. That kind of goes back to that dynamic risk assessment approach. So it is all about getting people to think twice, something I'm really keen to push. I think could potentially work, and other industries and organisations could adapt to it. So we're always trying to look for improvements, and we're trying to, really understand our employees a lot better. Whether that's we have regular meetings over virtual meetings at the moment, but yeah, we really are trying to make sure everybody is okay, and there is somebody there within the organisation they can talk to if they need to. That is so important.
Brilliant. No, thank you, James. And I think what I'm kind of guessing from that then is that the fact you've got existing communication channels already, if you were then going to attack maybe mental health as your next quarter, you've got facilities and services in order to do that effectively.
Absolutely. I suppose it's looking at making sure you've got the infrastructure as well. So rather than rolling with something, have you got the capabilities? Have you got the communication there? Because if you haven't got that, then it will be very difficult. So it's kind of using what kind of technologies, and just trying to think a bit outside the box, really.
Yeah.
Do something a bit different that people aren't used to, but it's working.
Yeah, I like that. It's trying not to reinvent the wheel, although it's a new topic maybe for some businesses. It's trying to embrace what you currently do to extend upon that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I like that. No, thank you for sharing.
You're very welcome.
The middle point I've got here, I guess is the most common when we're looking at mental health solutions, of course, is appointing and training mental health first aiders. Now, I think they are the right resource to engage in a business, but I guess the challenge presented on that is how many do you bring on board, and how do you select the right people to be a mental health first aider? That's, I guess, a challenge in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's start early 2019 stroke late 2018, we actually got all of our project directors, our senior managers and directors, including myself, on the MHFA first aid, mental health first aid course, which are fantastic. We've actually got one of our project directors is almost trainer in mental health first aid, so he's obviously going to be rolling that out within the business, and potentially some of our other supply chain, and maybe even some of our other subcontractors. So it's really pushing that, which I think is a fantastic approach. But yeah, it is. You've hit the nail on the head. It's choosing the right people, and I think it's understanding that type of person, their resilience, because being a mental health first aider, I suppose you've got to be open and honest to talk to people, but also to take their burdens on, but knowing the correct approach then to guide, support where they potentially may need it. So yeah, I think it's the person is essential, really.
Yeah, brilliant. No, thank you for that insight. I think we both definitely agree. It's all well and good having that resource, but it's making sure it's the right effective resource that doesn't then introduce any risks. Because as you say, if people haven't got the resilience and they then have a problem themselves, then we haven't done any justice right in the business.
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, it's all a very touchy subject, but yeah, the way we go about it is so cautious. The way we go about it is so paramount, so to speak. So it doesn't fail. Ultimately, it doesn't fail.
Yeah, yeah, very fair point. And I think that moves me to my kind of the final part of my strategy that I see a lot of. Of course, you can't manage what you can't measure. So that monitoring is so crucial. So we refer to them as sort of pulse surveys, or it might be employee satisfaction surveys, whatever you want to call it. But I guess the role of then tracking how people are feeling, whether they can be open and honest, whether there is a problem systemically in the business, I think surveys are absolutely crucial. And I don't know if it's something you've had exposure to already, James.
Yeah, we've done some around COVID, especially around COVID, about when we were introducing staff back into the office. We really wanted to get kind of understanding, what's the people feelings, what's their feelings, do they want to come back to the office? So yeah, I think that surveys is to understand how the employees are feeling. So, and ultimately, that all kind of interlinks with mental health. So, why not? That's what I think. Why not? You need to understand people you're working with. I think it comes back down to job satisfaction, and kind of how the managers are supporting them in their job will really play a big part in all of this.
No, brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. And maybe the last two questions I had was, are there any extra perks you can consider? So as an insight for Hands HQ, what our MD did to show his commitment to mental health, each lockdown, he allocated us an extra holiday and called it a mental health day. So he said, look, you need to take it in that time, and I want you to take it to prevent yourself from burnout. And I thought that was a fantastic commitment. I appreciate not every business can do that, but maybe thinking about what extra perks you can introduce to show commitment and awareness might be something useful to consider.
Absolutely. I think people want to, rather than take a sick day, sometimes they might not, they might just want to have like you said, a well-being day or a mental health day where they just need that time out. They just need to relax. If they are feeling a bit under the weather, if they are feeling tired, just because whether that's physically, mentally, it's just a reassurance. Actually, I'm not going to use my annual leave. I'm just going to take a well-being day. I think I think a lot of businesses are heading that direction.
No, thank you for that insight. I think it might. It's just balancing that, can you actually do it operationally without impeding on the business, but balancing people's health. It is a fine balance. We're not just saying that everyone should do this, but maybe it's something you should seriously consider.
Absolutely, it goes back to what you said. You can't manage what you can't measure. So if businesses are measuring this and they're seeing that if their employees are taking these wellbeing days off, is their productivity maximising in other areas? So again, it's looking into those finer analytics and details. Actually, if it is working, then it's something that maybe should be rolled out.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And certainly that's probably what my second question is looking at is, have you considered all these elements? And everyone listening to this webinar at the moment, what does your strategy look like? And is it something that you've built mental health into your existing safety strategy, or is it something you treat entirely separate? So I'd be really keen, James, we'll keep our eyes peeled that when this goes onto our blog, we'll be able to see what people are commenting on and sharing their stories as well.
Absolutely. I'll be very keen to understand what other organisations and businesses are doing out there. Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So, of course, opportunity. We've talked about, what mental health challenges are, what strategies can possibly look like. What else does good look like? So I'm trying to address better practices for mental health. And certainly the first one I could think about was that just culture. There's no blame culture. Oh, that person's got depression, therefore that means that they're going to be unproductive. They're going to be a waste of time as on awful terminology that I've probably heard in the past. So I think not being reprimanded for that and recognizing that it's not an individual's fault, I think is the real key to success. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. I think it goes back down to where we started with stigma. Ultimately, it's changing the stigma. And once we change that, I think the just culture will absolutely change. I think we're very fortunate in the UK. There's a lot of best practice out there. You've touched on some of their Mates in Mind, building mental health. There's Lighthouse for construction. I think I could go on. You've got Samaritans. There's quite a few out there. And it's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. And it's good that us organisations have got those resources to use. Another one is, it's going to come back to me in a minute. I think it's actually ending. It'll come back to me. Hold that note, it'll probably come back.
Okay. No, no problem. Yeah, we can return. I mean, that certainly allows me to move on to that next point, best practices. You mentioned there is a lot of resource out there, and quite a bit of it free, which is good to know. What I like, actually, I would recommend is the Consider It Constructors Scheme Hub. So for those people that are listening that are registered to that scheme, going on and having a look at the mental health spotlight and the best practice case studies, I think are a really good starting point just to test, are there any ideas that weren't once considered that you might be able to embrace because your business culture allows?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just come back to me. It's time to change. And time
Okay.
we use quite a lot of them, and some of their resources. We've got posters, for example, I've put around the office, in the toilets, around the office, in the kitchen, also on some of our sites where we have got lovely Harris fence storage areas. We've got some posters up, mental health as well. Just again, it goes back to making sure people are thinking twice. So there's such great resources out there that people should be using. Yeah.
Brilliant. No, thank you for sharing. That's certainly, yeah, other best practices out there. Like they show, the times change is very useful. I think what we also need to be mindful of is all well and good creating like the awareness campaigns, but it's actually then sort of going back to that monitoring. So I'm also very passionate about making sure that these are treated as incidents and are actually reported. Now, they can still be reported confidentially. We're not going to know, I don't know, Jim Smith on site has depression. But when you come across something, you say, I found an operative that was struggling, or I've had a mental health conversation, I think that should be very much recorded in current incident reporting procedures to make sure it's visible and acted on. You've got the remedy and realize whether this is an isolated issue or whether systemically there's more we need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point now. I think it's going to be really, really difficult to execute that. So it is to do remain that, so that confidentiality does remain, and it doesn't all become whisperers in politics. And he's got this and that. You know what I mean? You don't want to get into that kind of workplace culture, so to speak. So yeah, I think that will be one of the main challenges is incident reporting and how you capture it really.
Yeah. No, thank you for agreeing. I certainly think that we're not reinventing the wheel. If you've got an incident reporting process already, make sure mental health is recognised within that process.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think maybe not, although I call it an opportunity, it is a challenge as well. It's truly creating, promoting and leading a work-life balance, which I think is easier said than done.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. It is getting that work-life balance, and I think the COVID pandemic, although a lot of people have been working at home, from what I know, is a lot of people have been working twice as much because they're not commuting, or and I suppose it goes back to it's the type of person and how robust, and actually it's knowing when to kind of switch off and work, I suppose, and getting that work-life balance. And everybody will be good at, some people will be good at that and some people will be bad at that. So yeah, it's kind of just checking in with yourself really and getting that balance.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And that's probably why I put just culture at that top, that it all stems back to driving the right behaviours and attitude.
Yeah.
And maybe as a practical tip, what we do at Hands HQ to try and increase that work-life balance, that commitment, we actually turn off our servers at the end of the day. So if people are still working and send an email, it does get stuck in the server. It won't get sent out to the next day.
Which I think is really good, because usually, late in the night, you might see an email come in on your phone and you think, oh, actually, I'll quickly respond to that. And, before you know it, you could be, it could go on for a good time. So yeah, I think that it's good if businesses are taking that approach as well, and actually recognizing that actually, no, you've done your work now. Now it's time to wind down for the evening and relax.
Exactly, but it's just so difficult to come up with those practical examples. That's certainly the only one I could think of immediately. So if there's any others people would like to share, I'd be keen to see what people are going to follow up with.
Absolutely.
And I guess what relates to everything we're talking about is it's all well and good rolling stuff out, but it's got to be done timely. If there are incidents being reported and the awareness is poor, just burying your head in the sand is just simply not good enough, although it is such a difficult challenge.
Absolutely. No, any sort of campaigns that drive mental health and mental health awareness week you've got on there is really, really important. And there's also, not only that, there's also different topics throughout the year. For example, eating disorders, depression. There's all different types of days and weeks throughout the year. So I suppose you can relate that around then as well.
definitely, you should absolutely embrace current stuff, because I keep mentioning it, don't reinvent the wheel where you don't have to. So I think from memory, I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, but the Mental Health Awareness Week in the UK takes place between the 10th and 16th of May. So we've actually got enough time now to plan, okay, how can my business actually embrace that week, or maybe use the resources, or even just have simple conversations on site. And I think we've got enough time now, we're in March, to actually plan for that when it happens in May.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I've had one question come in as well, if I may ask it. It's around people asking, Rob, I really want to embrace mental health awareness and help my business, but we do have limited budgets. Are there any free resources out there you can recommend for individuals?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, going back to what we kind of touched on earlier with, we're very fortunate in the UK that a lot of organisations and charities out there are providing, your posters, resources, even some are even providing like a template, mental health policy. So it really is utilising that. Yeah, I think it's the NHS. There's an NHS website about mental health. It almost lists all the kind of charities on there and organisations, which I really urge people to look at. And there might be some more related around construction. So you've got men's mental health. So you can kind of tailor the kind of resource to the industry where you're working. So I think that's definitely one of the approaches to take. That is, that won't it's financially. Will support.
Sure. I don't know, James, thank you for that advice. Definitely, it's a case of going out there and seeing what resources are available. And as we've talked about throughout this, there is certainly a lot out there. I think maybe if I can give a quick bit of advice on that question as well, as I know that I'm quite a big fan of likes of mindfulness, because that helps you sort of manage your mindset and resilience. So there's a lot of apps out there that do offer some freemium services, as they call it. So the likes of apps such as Headspace and Calm are very much what I promote for individuals, because it can be treated very confidentially as well. If you really don't want your line manager to know about it, you can have that on your app, and in your lunch break, you can use that without people even realizing.
Absolutely. There's even someone I think I watch on YouTube. I think he's also available on podcasts. Is Dr. Rangan Chatterjee. I don't know if you've heard of him or not, but basically it's all about how to live more and live better. He is that, and he has a range of series. Some of them are quite long, that goes into different type of health topics. That's really helped me. And he refers to 4 pillars of health, which is relaxation, eating, so your nutrition, move, so your exercise, and then the last one, the final one is sleep. I think if we're looking at those 4 pillars to health, then I think your mental health will improve and be much better. Just following that simple strategy, ultimately.
Brilliant. No, I wasn't aware of that podcast actually, and the fact that it's structured into those 4 aspects to realise, what is the stressor in your life and how can you improve that. I really like that. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
So you'd be pleased to know, final slide. I kind of wanted to sort of sum it all up and see, how else we go forwards. What is the future of mental health going to look like in the industry? And maybe my first question is about, I don't think it can be like a short-term win. I think you do need to have this long-term strategy, make that strategy fit the business, and see, I guess, as an opportunity that what are you doing with your occupational health, generally speaking, at the moment, and how can you integrate mental health into that? I guess, Rome wasn't built in a day, and I think mental health awareness isn't going to take that, that short amount of time either.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be a long process, but I think a lot of things, it's baby steps. It's small, building slowly, get the awareness out there. Then once more people are aware of it and they're taking that grasp and they're taking an interest, there's more drivers, haven't you?
Definitely, it's all about baby steps. What I recommend to get those, it's the short-term wins to win that longer battle, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Really? And hopefully we move from a reactive journey to proactive, because we talked about most people, when you say what you're doing about mental health, we've got 3 mental health first aiders. Yeah. And I think that, you're reacting that there is a problem. That's why you put a resource in place, but maybe recognizing it in, say, staff surveys or even in a risk assessment, seeing it is a foreseeable risk on site and putting the right controls in place might turn it more into a proactive journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going back to, are we doing enough? I think a lot of the organisations need to ask themselves, are they doing enough, and is it right as well? I think that'd be a really big question for a lot of organisations. Are they doing enough? and
Yeah.
hopefully they don't need to see the result. Hopefully they'll see the results before their employees' health deteriorates.
Yeah, no, a very fair observation. And I'm hoping maybe another key driver, which moves into my third point, is whether they might even embrace mental health first aid into the first aid legislation, or even wider guidance and expertise outside the Equality Act. So we always see in safety that legislation's always been a key driver. Maybe the real drive we need is to legislate it better. I'm not sure.
I think that is. I think we need that. Honestly, I think we need our government to review legislation around mental health, which I think they are. Touch wood, and hopefully we'll see. Once it's coming from the top, it's almost businesses have to rather. We have to have first aiders. So let's have to have mental health first aiders, and let's drive that more. I think is so important. So, and then it all stems down from there. So if the main contractors are putting pressure on subcontractors and their supply chain, then they're more likely to adapt to it because they need to rather than they want to. Definitely a driver there is legislation, and I'll be glad if something does come up about it.
Watch this space for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think maybe lastly, we know that businesses are embracing 45,001 because, we're still in that transition period from 18,000. So a lot of businesses, it's still very topical. I can't imagine it's being fully released yet. I thought it was on final consultation, but I'll be corrected. We've got the 45,003 guideline, which is about managing psychosocial risks.
Wow. Okay. To be fair, Rob, that's all new to me. So I'll be glad to look at that into more detail, and it'd be good if a lot of businesses are seeing value in that ISO standard.
Yeah, it's nice to see that a guideline exists, that we've realised actually psychosocial as a factor is a very foreseeable risk in businesses, and it's outside of looking at likes of fatigue management or stress. We're looking at mental health specifically, which is a stressor in itself. And knowing that a guideline exists, again, I'm not sure if it's being formally released. I certainly went under the consultation with IOSH a couple of months back, but it has been released. I really do encourage people to start having a look at it.
Yeah, I think it'd be one of those things that if the main contractors of the clients determine this ISO standard, then I think a lot of subcontractors and some of the supply chain, not just in construction, will jump at this and get this one under the belt.
That's such a fair point. In tenders, we do see that clients are asking for 45,001 certification. If it goes down the line that they also want to embrace psychosocial confidence with this guideline being implemented as well, that's another great opportunity. So I think a fantastic point.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, James, really appreciate your time today. Hopefully we've certainly given some good insight and some solutions to consider to our audience. Was there anything further you wanted to bring up before I bring it to a close?
No, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. Mental health is something that's close to my heart, and I think it's great having this conversation today. But it's really giving our audience that inspiration. Actually, can they take actions? Can they take away anything that we've discussed today and implement in their organisations to improve themselves and to improve their organisations and to embrace it? That's exactly what we need, and we need more of. I think one thing I want to say is, we're very much, we need to talk about mental health. We need to talk about, I'm all for that, but I think it's one thing is who we talk to is so important as well. And it's finding those people out there that are willing to listen and understand and help you. And if you can find those people, that's fantastic. I think I really want to leave the audience with actually, are we doing enough, and can we do more, and what are you guys doing? Because I want to hear about it as much as you do, Rob.
A great way to end it. I thank you very much again, James. I don't think I can say anything more on the matter apart from I look forward to our audience telling us, what their journey looks like.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks again then. Take care.
Take care, Rob. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Cheers.